Welcome to Power Podcast, episode 74.64. Power Podcast is an audio supplement for Public Administration Review, the premier professional journal in the field of public administration. In 2015, Power will celebrate 75 years of furthering public administration research, theory, and practice. This episode features comments by Aimee L. Williamson, Associate Professor in the Institute for Public Service at Suffolk University. Professor Williamson introduces the Power Symposium on the lessons learned from the Boston Marathon bombings. This introduction, titled Making Boston Strong, Social Capital, Collaboration, and Accountability Lessons for Public Administrators in the 21st Century, was co-authored with Brenda J, who was also an associate professor in the Institute for Public Service at Suffolk University. This essay is currently available on Early View and will be printed in Public Administration Review, Issue 74, Volume 6.
Welcome to the podcast for the Power Symposium, Boston Strong, Lessons Learned, Gaps Remaining, and New Issues since 9/11. This symposium reflects upon and evaluates the coordination of the response to the attacks, lessons learned since 9/11, and implications for public administrators. As public administration professors in the heart of Boston, with students and alumni present at the attacks and working for responding agencies, as well as personal ties to policing and the Boston Marathon, the attacks hit particularly close to home for us. We wanted to provide an opportunity for practitioners and academics to analyze the events in Boston as a contribution to the important conversations around public responses during crises. In teaching public administration, so often we use case studies or scenarios of things gone wildly wrong. The Boston attacks and subsequent response give us the opportunity to learn from successes as well as identify mistakes. While there have been questions and concerns around communication and collaboration failures that could have prevented the attacks, the multi-agency response has been a source of pride for the Boston community. The extensive collaboration and preparedness across a multitude of agencies likely minimized the number of deaths and led to a relatively quick capture of the suspects. The resulting symposium includes our introduction, a practitioner perspective by one of the most prominent figures in the crisis, and 2 academic articles reporting empirical research findings related to the attacks. Themes emerging include the importance of social capital, trust, and collaboration for effective emergency management, and the question of whether or not crises serve as catalysts for reform. Edward Davis is an internationally recognized police leader with 35 years in law enforcement. As the Boston Police Commissioner at the time of the bombings, he played a leading and critical role in the response. In his perspective, he reflects upon his career and highlights the importance of collaboration. He describes himself as a community-centered leader who believes in prevention, partnerships, and problem-solving. His perspective highlights the importance of long-term attention to planning, leadership, and collaboration. He argues that the Boston response was decades in the making, and he attributes its success to the community-centric focus and the long history of collaborative efforts in Boston. University of Central Florida professors Jian Hu, Claire Connolly Knox, and Niam Capuchu focus on the specific actions and interactions among various actors involved with the response. Using social network analysis, they examine a network of 138 organizations involved in the initial response and recovery effort, comparing the planned disaster networks with the actual response to the Boston Marathon. They then compare this response to that of 9/11, finding that the Boston response showed more systematic and cross-sector collaboration than the public response to 9/11 12 years earlier. The authors identify key lessons from the Boston response, highlighting the importance of preparation and the establishment of disaster response networks to strengthen interagency coordination and collaboration, as well as the value of a whole community approach to emergency management. George Mason University professor John Marvel uses the case as a setting for a study examining the impact of blame statements by public administrators and politicians on citizens' perceptions. Using an experimental design, Marvel examines how public perceptions of culpability and credibility vary based on the position of the person doing the blaming and the agency being blamed. The study suggests that public managers are considered more competent and trustworthy than politicians overall, but that party identification and the subject of the blame statement also play a role. Marvel concludes that the public's notion of blame is malleable, which causes concern for political responses to crises, but that the public does tend to evaluate statements as opposed to blindly taking something for granted. In sum, this symposium reflects on lessons learned since 9/11, contributes to the network and collaboration literatures, and provides opportunity to consider gaps remaining. The Boston case highlights the value of an impressive health and safety infrastructure with long-standing communication and coordination practices. While there are likely unique elements of the Boston situation, the case offers insightful lessons demonstrating that some of the changes recommended since 9/11 have occurred and likely helped to minimize the tragedy of the Boston Marathon bombings. For more information, you can find this symposium in the November-December issue of Public Administration Review. We thank you for your interest.
This concludes PAR Podcast, episode 74.64. To listen to additional episodes and learn more about Public Administration Review, please visit us online at publicadministrationreview.org. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at PA Review. Thanks for listening.